All right, let's shift our attention to Lansing now here on the Frank Beckmann Show, and we welcome in a pair of senators, one from each party, who are working together on legislation. Isn't that good to hear just by itself? You have a Democrat and a Republican working together. They do that quite a lot in the legislature. It may not be carried over to the executive branch when matters get that far, but in the legislature, they work pretty well together, it seems. Michael MacDonald's a Republican from Macomb Township. Paul Voyno is a Democrat from Warren, and they have gotten together on legislation that is aimed at trying to make animal abusers more accountable for what they do to animals. We'll start with Senator MacDonald, the Republican from the majority party. Good morning to you, Senator. Nice to have you with us.
Good morning, Frank. Great to be here.
Okay, and Senator Voyno, good to have you with us as well.
Good morning, Frank. Thank you.
How did this come about, this legislation you two put together? Who came up with the idea? Who's going to claim the most credit for it here?
Oh, you could have it, Paul. I don't know, Frank, how familiar you are with the Sterling incident that happened in Macomb County.
I read about it, yes. Somebody had a dog and had a friend who said, hey, I want that dog, give it to me. He took the dog from a local shelter, as I understand it, and took it to a park, stabbed the dog to death, and then it died in below freezing temperatures out there. That's what started it, right?
Yeah, this individual fixated on killing this dog. They knew it. They wouldn't give him the dog. He got his friend to get the dog for him, and then he did this horrific act. He will be sentenced to prison, but his friend who got the dog for him, there's nothing you can do.
Mm-hmm. My question, though, is: do we know that the friend knew this? I mean, the object is to make the person who provided the animal that got abused, to make him accountable as well, right?
Well, so Michigan law already recognizes helping someone acquire drugs or components used to manufacture drugs. This would just create kind of a similar statute. If they could prove he knew, then he would be held accountable, but they'd have to be able to prove it.
Yeah, and that's the difficulty, isn't it? I mean, in this case, for instance, do we know that the man who provided the dog to the sicko, do we know that he recognized what was going to happen?
Well, the prosecutors can't pursue it because there is nothing they could do, even if they proved he knew, because there's no law that would hold him accountable. Well,
that's pretty sad because it's a co-conspirator if you're doing that sort of thing, right? And we've got that covered in just about every other piece of criminal legislation in our state.
Well, the scary thing, Frank, is a person that would do this to a dog, what would they do to a person? And what is this person going to become in the future? And it's hard to believe his friend didn't know, if he knew him for a long enough time, that he was just psychopathic.
Mm-hmm. And how often does this sort of thing happen, senators?
Well, what I wanted to add, Frank, is that our legislation actually may be narrow in some ways, but it also expands the ability for prosecutors to target individuals who have abused animals. It seems like we're seeing a growing trend, not only here in Michigan, but nationwide. Just recently in Taylor, we had someone adopt 2 dogs, and those dogs were then put on I-94, and they were killed. So
oh my goodness. Even
though it may sound that we're targeting individuals in a narrow area, we're actually giving prosecutors the flexibility to prosecute those who adopt and abuse animals in different ways.
Yeah, and I for one, as a longtime pet owner, throughout my life I've had pets. I just cannot fathom bringing these kind of animals in your possession just so that you can torture and hurt them like this. It just makes no sense to me.
Well, in
what goes through your mind,
convicted animal abusers can still adopt animals.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awfully sad. And so your legislation, let's talk about exactly what it would allow the law enforcement community to do and what penalties it would put in place for those that knowingly provide these animals to people who intend to harm them.
Well, Senator MacDonald's bill would criminalize the practice of knowingly providing an animal to an individual who intends to abuse the animal or use the animal in a fighting operation, where my legislation creates sentencing guidelines for those who would violate the terms of his bill.
Mm-hmm. And those sentencing guidelines, Senator Voino, what would they be?
As it relates to neglect and cruelty, the statutory maximum sentence would be 2 years. Animal neglect or cruelty would be 4 years, and it could also go up to 7 years, involving 25 animals or more.
Yeah, it's too bad we can't put a little more into there, like locking them in a small room with 6 pit bulls. You know, that would be the real penalty for one of these people, I think.
Exactly.
But so it all came out of this one case, and that's how legislation gets born. Is you get outraged by it, you make sure that it doesn't happen again, right? It may not be widespread; it may only happen once a year, but that's once too many.
Yeah, and I wanted to say too, I think we have a good Senate delegation here in Macomb County. We work well together, and I think if you put the three of us in a room, we'd come out with a budget in several hours. And get rid of Act 51.
Wait, who's the third one?
Lucido.
We have myself.
Oh, Pete Lucido.
And Senator MacDonald.
Yeah.
And Senator Lucido.
All right. Well, the only problem there is getting a word in edgewise, but that's another story. No, he's delightful. We love having him on the air, and he's a great contributor to the community. He's a wonderful philanthropist as well, and we love having him on the show, and we've loved having both of you on as well. Good luck with this. I've got to believe, because you've got it on a bipartisan basis, it's going to fly through.
I do want to compliment, though, our staffs. Mike MacDonald has a great office staff, and as myself and our staffers really worked hard on this legislation as well, and they're the ones that often go unrecognized by the public and do so much work for us.
Yeah, I second that.
Wonderful of both of you to credit them, and we hope for the best in the passage. When will the next vote come on this?
I am guessing that it might be possible that we will take this up by the end of the year, or maybe right after the first of the year as well. I know we're working on a supplemental budget, and some of the policy issues are left aside until we complete the supplemental.
All righty, beautiful. Hey, thank you both for joining us. We appreciate it. Glad to see the Republicans and Democrats working together to get something done here on a bill that would hopefully cut down on the abuse of animals in our state. Senator Mike MacDonald, thank you. Senator Paul Voino, thank you as well. Nice to have you both on the show.
Yeah, anytime,
Frank.